Welcome to the Firebelly Social Show. We're focused on talking to food and beverage brands that are on a mission to make the world better.
Welcome to the Firebelly Social Show. I'm your host, Duncan Alney, where we speak to leading entrepreneurs, founders, CEOs of mission-driven food and beverage brands. And this episode is brought to you by Firebelly, which I founded. At Firebelly, we make brands more likable, more profitable through social media marketing. That's all we do, folks. 100% social media marketing. And we have been named the #1 social media agency organically by Clutch. And we've helped clients like Netflix, Qdoba, Fiji Water, and many others transform their social media marketing strategies. If you want to make your brand more likable and profitable, let's talk. Go to firebellymarketing.com. But today I'm particularly excited for a number of reasons. Our guest today is a badass founder and CEO. He's also a client and he's become a friend. And so welcome to Sid Sheth of Trillium Beverages. And they are the masterminds behind the viral brand Thirsty Fox. It's a cider company. It's a cider brand. All natural, first of its kind, premium, small batch craft cider. Now, when you hear something like that, you expect it to be in the Northeast, but hey, guys, it's in India. And he's got the ambition to launch a craft cider, not just the cider, but the damn category itself in India. And so we're going to talk to Sid about how his company has become India's only triple award-winning craft cider, and what he's going to do with that next. So Sid, please be very welcome, my man.
Thanks for having me, Duncan.
So happy to be here. And you and I have got a couple things in common. So maybe more, but let's start with a couple. We're both born, brought up, grew up in India. And then in addition to that, we've both gone to college in Indiana.
That is right. Not very far from where you are. So I went to Purdue for my undergrad in chemical engineering. And while I did hang around too long in the Midwest, that was my first kind of home away from home.
That's right. So you have done the West Lafayette thing. You've been to all the bars. You've been to the restaurants. You've crawled home. And then you went on to, you went back to India, or did you go to Seattle after that?
No, I ended up working in New Jersey for a bit. I was at L'Oreal doing, lab work as a chemist. And then kind of found myself working at a tech startup based in Long Island. And then as the story goes for a lot of immigrants and for a lot of students who come to the U.S. And intend to kind of make a career and make a life out of, the opportunities that are present here, but find themselves kind of hitting a roadblock with the immigration aspect of, how the systems are set up. I didn't manage to get a H-1B visa to be able to kind of stay and work in the country, and so I had to return home to India, where I spent 3 years kind of working with my parents, and then kind of realized that I was no fan of selling plastics, and decided to come back to Seattle and get my MBA from the University of Washington.
Awesome. And then you worked at Amazon when it was more difficult to get into Amazon as an employee than it was to go to IIT or MIT.
That's right. Yeah. And that was a challenge. And I think even right now, with all of the press that you're reading, both good and bad, a lot of that does kind of still kind of hold true. I mean, it's a great place to work. I think I learned a lot. But the culture is one that's definitely kind of hard, and it does kind of make you question a lot of things. But it was a great learning experience. And I think you have to make of it what you can, and
Totally.
kind of move on, and progress and do some other interesting things. And so I moved from Seattle to Boston, and that's where this whole idea of craft ciders kind of germinated, because I happened to go to a gym that shared a a production facility with a craft cider company, which unfortunately, as of a couple weeks ago, Dana and Michelle at Bantam decided to kind of shut down operations, because Somerville, like a lot of suburbs in the U.S., is now kind of seeing a lot of redevelopment, and so they had to kind of give up their facility and try and find another space. And with COVID and with bars and restaurants kind of being shut, that was really hard.
Yeah.
But we're still continuing to kind of work with them, kind of getting them involved and having them help us formulate our products. And we can kind of talk about this, a little further down the conversation. But that's where it kind of germinated. I kind of left them a note and asked them if they'd be interested in helping to bring ciders to India. And, that note kind of led to a couple of conversations, and that conversation led to me kind of packing my bags and, moving to India in July of 2016. And then
let me interrupt you. Let me interrupt you for a second. So, Sid, I bet you that note would be so amazing for social media. Is there a photo of the original note?
There isn't, but I know I have. I remember exactly what I had written down, and so when we recreated it for the Trillium website, I just kind of hand wrote it, and we kind of managed to kind of convert that into something of a keepsake. But I so distinctly and vividly remember the contents of that note.
Phenomenal. And Sid, I know that your the woman behind the scenes is Nupur, your wife. And isn't it true that in your very first meeting with your future wife, you actually brought up the vision of Thirsty Fox and Trillium?
Yes, and that's what I think we kind of bonded over. So Nupur and I had a traditional arranged marriage, and traditional, I mean, in the sense that we were kind of set up by our parents. And then it was the conversation around ciders and beers and, actually marketing and packaging agencies that kind of got us to connect, because I was kind of impressed with Nupur's, pulse on everything, marketing and, food and drink. And that's how that's how that kind of went. And so we just had a baby girl who's now just 9 weeks old. And so over the past 2 years, we've launched the business, moved, found ourselves in lockdown now in 2 different continents, one in India and now here in the US. And we've had a baby in the process. It's been fun having her around, and I managed to poach her from her other agency job and have her kind of help me run Thirsty Fox and Trillium, and she handles all of the branding and the marketing and the PR activities for us, and I kind of do some of the more math intensive and less people facing stuff, because I'm more of an introvert, and she happens to kind of very well kind of complement my lack of social skills with being extremely outgoing and just all around people person.
Well, Sid, I've heard the other side of the story, which is that Nupur is happy to have you around. So, so listen, like I want to just for the sake of our audience here, like just kind of like frame this whole thing. It's like
Sure.
so you are a Indian man born in a small town in Gujarat. You come to the
That's
U.S.
right.
You go to school. You find yourself in Boston. You're next door to a successful cidery. You decide to pitch them on being involved in the business opportunity. And so what now happens is these are single source apples coming from the northeast of the United States. You're exporting the concentrate to India. They're being brewed in India into a premium or ultra premium cider, hard cider, that's being then sold initially in Bombay, in Pune, and how many more markets to come. I mean, this is truly a global enterprise.
It is. So to kind of give you a little bit of backstory, and the way that we kind of designed and conceptualized the brand, and this is a rather kind of simple philosophy that I've kind of looked at things and as at business is, if I can kind of get away with charging people a premium, I use that as a forcing function to force me to provide more value to the consumer and the customer than what they're paying for, which means that everything else surrounding the experience needs to make the consumer feel that they've gotten an experience above and beyond the price that they paid for the cider. And so from the way that we handle customer service to how we communicate with our consumers to even the occasions that we're pushing Thirsty Fox to kind of become synonymous with, all of those are, targeted towards a very, very different audience than what you would generally see, alcoholic beverages being targeted to. So the idea here is, how do we provide consumers an experience, one, which they would have not had otherwise, and two, how do we elevate that experience by going above and beyond in areas that, consumers generally kind of are left feeling rather underwhelmed with. So to kind of give you an example of that second point, the reason that we kind of looked at doing ciders was we kind of think about ciders as falling on a continuum between beers on one side and wines on the other. So beers on a occasion and a occasion of consumption, and the format of consumption. So beers tend to be carbonated, single serve, served cold, and wines on the other hand, which ciders are pretty much is pretty much apple juice fermented using the same techniques as wine is, but rather than being so kind of stuffy and complex, ciders tend to be a little bit more easygoing. And so we've tried to create a world and a set of occasions for ciders that try and marry the best of both of those categories, and that's the idea. And the way that we kind of designed our ciders is primarily kind of, we designed the packaging and the bottles and the labels to kind of entice consumers to first try us. But just getting consumers to try us won't mean that we have repeat business. And I think one of the winning points about the ciders that we've designed is the ciders are so easy to drink. They're so refreshing. They're so light that every time somebody kind of tries our products, they keep on coming back, because they're they don't leave you feeling bloated. They don't feel you. They don't leave you hungover the next day, unless you've obviously had like half a case, which I don't condone that. But yeah, we've designed them to kind of provide that whole experience from the first moment a consumer kind of lays eyes on them till they kind of put the bottles in the fridge and drink and consume them. And even after the fact, we try and kind of try and set things straight if a consumer is unhappy with our products. And that's the philosophy that I've kind of looked at the brand under Thirsty Fox, which is, how do we continue to kind of get people to pay more and use that as a forcing function to help us and push us to innovate and create new flavors and new experiences that people would be more than willing to kind of pay for.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's brilliant, A. And B, I think it's unusual to see a brand, and we've been, talking, since last year, to see a brand that is as young as you are with as sophisticated a sort of system and the thinking and the identification and the naming categories and the explanations and even down to the bottle. There's just a lot of sophistication in that and the world that you've created, even down to the way that the bottle, the variants, the varietals are named with, double letters in the middle. I think that, and where they could even be your friends. I think I love what you just said. There is a world around the Thirsty Fox. It feels, and I mean this in the most positive way, it feels less like a regional cider from Bombay or Maharashtra, and more like a global cider that is birthing in India.
And that's the idea. And like I was saying, that was the idea when we conceptualized the brand. And so Akash, who was the brand custodian, and he and I worked from the conceptualization and the designing of each and every single element that we, that you kind of see on the brand. We made some very, very deliberate choices in all of the decisions, whether it was, what color apples to use, which side of the labels the apples should be positioned, and to the point that you made, how should we name the ciders? All of those design decisions were very, very deliberate, primarily because we wanted to kind of show the world that, India was capable of producing world-class products, and that, if we really tried, we could, and I think we've kind of proved this now, that we can kind of compete on an international stage with some of the biggest brands in the world. And it just kind of comes down to being very, very, I would say, deliberate about some of the design choices and some of the business trade-offs that we had to make. And so to kind of give you a little bit of examples in terms of how far we went into kind of sourcing and designing our labels and our products. So we get pretty much all of our raw materials, including the apple juice, cherries, and honey, all the way from the US. We kind of ship most of this in a reefer container all the way from ports in the Northwest to Mumbai, where it then gets offloaded and shipped to a cold storage. Our bottles come from Germany. Our labels were designed by an agency in London. They were printed in Italy. All of this was shipped to Mumbai. We then took all of this material and then, had it shipped to the cidery where all of this was put together. We've seen, with all of this effort that we've put in, I think it's just been overwhelming to kind of see the response from consumers, because they tend to appreciate the effort that's gone in, not only in terms of the brand and the design of the products, but also just how well they taste. And I think being able to kind of source all of this, kind of make ciders like these in India, and then now that we're competing in international competitions, I think we're getting noticed just for the quality across the world. And I think that's just, and this kind of credit goes to the rest of the team for being able to kind of pull this off. Because when we started, nobody on the team knew how to make ciders. Like, nobody on the team knew how to make ciders. None of us came from a alcohol or an alcoholic beverage, or even a food and beverage background. We found somebody who made wine, and we worked with Dana and Michelle at Bantam to kind of, formulate our recipes to the Indian conditions and the raw materials that we had available. And it just goes to show that, when you kind of break down problems and kind of, start from first principles, nothing's kind of impossible. So I think this has been like the most satisfying piece of the journey, which is from not knowing how cider was made, but starting off with just a vision and a dream of creating a category, and I think creating a premium product. We've been able to figure all of this out within the span of 2.5, 3 years. And while our journey's just begun, it's really kind of heartening to see the response that we've gotten in Mumbai and in Pune, and actually even in India. And so it's a lot of fun to be able to kind of take some of these challenges, technical challenges, and I think even to a large extent, with the kind of work that you guys are doing for us, to be able to kind of understand what's kind of driving consumers these days. What's the consumer kind of looking for, and how do we get in front of the consumer at the right time, at the right place, and at the right moment, and kind of get them to become a part of this idea and this experience in this world that that we're trying to create with Thirsty Fox and with the category and the brand. And I think that is, the most interesting part of this whole journey.
I mean, it's phenomenal, the thought that you guys have put into it, and I know that you've got, when you're very transparent and kind about, giving attribution and credit to people. But I mean, Sid, this is phenomenal. Did you've and even down to the fact that when you're eating, I don't think I'm misrepresenting our culture when I say that, Indian food, regardless of region, tends to be spicy.
It does.
And so,
it does.
Do you really want to drink a big, heavy bottle of gluten water with an already like spicy meal? We've done it.
Probably not. Yeah.
We've done it. We've all done it. But now there's an option. And the option is, man, you can drink a cider. You can have a carefully engineered taste profile that's gluten-free and that's cold, refreshing. It's a little bit fizzier than wine. And it doesn't involve the volume commitment that a beer does. And it almost seems like this is just natural. But along the way, like, becoming an entrepreneur, I mean, I know you come from an entrepreneurial family, but what's it been like literally like building infrastructure, processes, protocols, this huge team of people? Like what's that been like for you? And of course, Nupur.
So let me kind of start this answer with one question, like one viewpoint, which I think, and you might probably know this because you've set up businesses before, which is, it's one thing to kind of go to school and go get a formal education or an MBA to learn like NPV calculations or managerial accounting or production and operations. I think all of that kind of pales in comparison to just the emotional stress, and I think the emotional joys of the constant ups and downs that just running a business bring. And I don't think any sort of education other than having to go through the motions of doing something prepares you for the kind of toll it ends up taking on you. And so to kind of give you a little bit of backstory in terms of like just my experience with Thirsty Fox. So when we launched cider in Mumbai, from a regulatory standpoint, the category of ciders didn't exist in the excise regulations, which meant that the state exchequer, which collects duties and taxes on alcoholic products, didn't know how they should tax our product, which meant that until there was a ruling passed with clarification on the levies that were to be assessed on a product like cider, we were held in limbo pretty much for like a year and a half, where we didn't know if we had to shut down the business even before it got off the ground. Right. So there were moments between when we had the product ready, when we had the labels ready, when we had like millions of dollars of worth of raw material inventory sitting in our cold storage facilities, where I didn't know whether there was going to be a regulatory, green light for me to go out and sell these products. And so it was in moments like those where, I had already invested a good year and a half and, hundreds and thousands of rupees into setting up the business and operations, where I absolutely had no idea what the future kind of was going to hold. But I think this kind of comes back to the point that I made earlier, which is I think entrepreneurship and business is as much a kind of, commitment to being true to the vision and, the aspirations and goals and dreams and hopes that you set for the business and for yourself from a long-term perspective, as much as it is like the daily kind of grind and slog of putting out fires and, dealing with the day-to-day, and being able to find that balance between, setting your vision to a potential endpoint, but also kind of finding joy in the daily grind. I think that is a challenge, and that's a process that one has to kind of be extremely kind of comfortable with, because they tend to kind of act in, opposing directions, with the day-to-day kind of administrative tasks and work kind of, keeping you in the present, but the future kind of calling you and trying to kind of, forget the mundane and kind of hope for the best. And that part was really challenging for me, because I had pinned all my hopes on, getting this business off the ground, and not knowing what could be done to kind of move things along was stressful. It was stressful to the point that I used to come home and break down in front of Nupur, because I didn't know whether I was going to be able to pay salaries for that month if we didn't start production, and I didn't know what was going to happen with all of the money that we'd invested in the business. But then, kind of still having that faith in my ability, in the ability of everybody else on the team, that we'd be able to figure this out. That's what kind of kept us going. And I think just being able to stick with that conviction that we have a great product, that we have a world-class brand that we've managed to create, and being true to that, I think has been, it has given us a lot of confidence in our abilities to kind of pull off whatever comes next, whether it's, expanding into other markets in India, potential, international markets, or, maybe creating a completely separate category. I think, just having to go through those moments has been something of a confidence booster for all of us in the team. And yeah, that's what I have to say about that.
I can't even thank you enough for speaking from the heart on that. I mean, I'm my motivation for having you on today as a guest was to shine my light on you, because the endurance, the perseverance, the vision that it takes to start and launch a company, and how so many of them fail. And not only that, but to not start a Me Too company and just start a company that's basically like a category creator, an award-winning company with values, and I'm so thankful that you're doing what you're doing. Let me ask you this, since Firebelly obviously has got a strong focus on social. What is the social role for Thirsty Fox? Like, how does social play into all of this?
So I think that answer requires a lot of context, because marketing and advertising for alcohol products in India is very different than in the US. So in India, the rules prohibit any sort of print ads, TV ads, radio ads, or any sort of billboards. So up until when social media kind of and digital marketing kind of took hold in the country, marketing for alcoholic products used to happen, and I think it still does to a large extent, at least for the larger brands, is what they call as surrogate marketing, which basically meant that a big, like a big beer brand would launch a surrogate, say a bottled water with the same name, and they'd kind of get around the restrictions on advertising by talking about the branded water on TV, with the hope that consumers would recall the actual brand when they stepped into a wine shop or a liquor store. So up until that point, the advertising was relatively difficult. What's happened now for the last, I think, 8 to 10 years now, is with a lot more people moving online and spending, hours together glued to their phones, social media and digital marketing has become the only way that smaller brands like ours can get in front of the right consumers, because we can't spend the big money to go out and create a surrogate brand. We can't, there's beyond, this is the only way that we can reach our target consumers, because that's where they hang out, and that's what they do these days. So social media for us has been, and digital marketing for us has been the only channel that we can use to market and advertise our products. And so without that, I don't know how we'd be able to kind of get in front of the consumers or kind of create also this sense of occasions or this world of Thirsty Fox that we're trying to create with the imagery and the occasions for the consumers. So for us, our focus has been to kind of use Instagram and Facebook to help consumers kind of understand what the brand's about, what the brand kind of stands for, and what the brand world kind of looks like. And our focus has just been that. And so we're just recently, with your guys' help, we're running a campaign to kind of talk about how to pair ciders with, certain foods. And before that, it was, with the monsoons kind of now setting in India, we have a campaign talking about what to do with ciders in the torrential rains of the Indian monsoon. So for us, being able to create this idea of what the Thirsty Fox world looks like, I think is best done on a platform such as Instagram, because it lets consumers really kind of get a sense of what to expect.
Yeah, that's really great. I know that that's something I first heard going back a couple of minutes in the conversation, that I first heard Jamie Gilpin, who's the chief marketing officer at Sprout Social, say, social is the only door open to some brands. And I think it doesn't matter what the reason is, but, whether it's timing or proximity or ability to communicate quickly, or whether it's scalability or budgets or barriers to entry. I mean, at the end of the day, that is so true. And especially when it comes to, moving quickly. But the other piece that I love about what you said, like I was scrolling earlier today, and even though I'm sitting here in the US and I'm watching your feed coming out of India, I ended up going to get tacos for lunch because I saw that, hey,
that's interesting.
And it's crazy because it's, here I am in Indianapolis on a rainy day in the summer, but it's like, hey, you know what pairs really well with tacos? It's Thirsty Fox cider. Now, so I go to a place to eat where the Thirsty Fox is not available, and I order Unfortunately, I order a cheap imitation, and then while I'm sitting at lunch, I'm scrolling and like, hey, you know what pairs really, really well with pancakes? It's Thirsty Fox cider. And so I think that's interesting that you guys are building a world around the product. And I think it's interesting because it's so carefully curated, and I know that's by design. So I think that you're succeeding in that. I mean, I know I'm biased for sure, but before we get to the last couple of questions, Sid, let's tell the audience how they can find Thirsty Fox online.
So on Instagram, we are at instagram.com/thirstyfoxcider, and our website is thirstyfox.com. Unfortunately, we're not available in the US just yet. We have plans on coming here hopefully in the next couple of years. But if you have friends and family who live in Mumbai or in India, we're pretty much available all across both those cities. And so you can get UPS or FedEx or a friend from India to kind of have those shipped to you.
I mean, and it's I'm sure it's well worth it. So a couple of more questions for you. Let me ask you this. When it comes to you chilling out, like what kind of what I mean, I know that you have varied beverage tastes. What is the kind of music that you like to listen to when you're chilling out?
So I actually kind of enjoy listening to new age classical. I one of a couple of the artists that I like are one is called blanking out on his name. As usual, when you want to think of this person,
yeah, and it's my
give me
bad. I
one
surprised
second.
you with this question. So I mean,
Yeah. So
I just know that someone like you is going to be kind of working against the tapestry of music, So I was just curious
yes.
about it.
So that happens to be. So I really like this Italian composer by the name of Ludovico Einaudi. So he makes really nice atmospheric, ephemeral compositions using the piano. And then I like Oliver Arnold. So again, classical music, piano kind of synthy, really nice kind of spacey music. And then if I really kind of need to get work done, you're gonna have a laugh. You're gonna laugh at this, but I am actually very, very a '90s kid. I like to listen to Goa trance.
Oh wow, look
That's
at you.
so that's what my poison is when I'm trying to kind of concentrate and just need something to kind of tune out everything else. But anything that's reminiscent of the rave parties of Goa's beaches is a lot of fun to kind of just bang out work on.
Awesome. I said thank you so much for being here. I want to ask you one last question, which is,
Sure.
for people like yourself that are like, big, the few out there that, have big ideas, the ones that want to change the world and like bring, a cider to India, but, whatever their vision is, in the beverage space, what's a couple pieces of advice for them?
I think the biggest piece of advice I would say is really kind of understanding how it is that you're going to sell, and what is the value proposition, and how are you going to convince, like really understanding how are you going to convince somebody to part with their hard-earned money. I think I kind of underestimated this in this whole process. I thought setting up the business was going to be really hard. What's actually harder and harder by order of magnitude is getting people to buy and being able to go out and sell. I think really kind of getting good at selling, and not only just selling your products, but being able to sell a story, be able to sell yourself. I think if you are in the business of creating value, and if you really want to become an entrepreneur, you have to learn how to sell. And I think that by in itself, I think is, if I can kind of leave people with one advice and one thing to kind of work on, is just learn how to sell. And I think that kind of makes a big difference. Then obviously kind of having making sure that you have a team that you can trust on. I think all of those foundational bits and nuts and bolts of setting up a good business, all of those kind of notwithstanding, just being confident in your ability to kind of, embark on a journey, and having the confidence in your abilities to kind of do this, I think is going to be, extremely important when you kind of get overwhelmed with the day-to-day operations. And so, yeah, those are a couple pieces of advice that I'd leave people with.
Thank you so much. I mean, I know someone asked me recently, when you're an entrepreneur, especially when you're getting started, what's it like? And I was like, I've never been a decathlete, but it feels like running a decathlon, because you've got to do, forget a triathlon. I mean, a triathlon's nothing. It's like a decathlete. It's like, you've got to do so many different things, and what you can't do naturally, you've got to adapt yourself into learning. You've got to be constantly dynamic. And, it isn't for everyone because you're always on, and the pressure is never ending. And even when you get further on and you're scaling and you're becoming more specialized, it doesn't go away. So really,
and yes, it's about being able to put yourself out there and really focus on learning, and I think also kind of knowing what you're good at, but also knowing what you kind of suck at, and kind of being able to kind of delegate those things that you're not good at to somebody who is good at. And I think this other point that before we end, I think is I think what's kind of made a big difference for us is this is more pertinent in the light of COVID, is just being able to go and find people that were smarter than us and having them kind of advise us made the biggest impact. And now when people can kind of work remotely and don't need to be let alone in the same office, right? Or we're working, say, with you guys with operations based in Indiana. For us, what's made the difference is we've just gone out and found people who are really good at what they do, and getting them on board and having them kind of help us and teach us. And that, I think, is something that I enjoy, and I think that's made a significant difference to how we kind of see the world. So as a founder and as a leader, my job is to just make sure that I'm working with people who are smarter than I am. And Duncan, you and your team, you happen to be one of those people that I kind of look up to, and we learn quite a bit from you guys.
Well, Sid, thank you so much. You've been an amazing guest. Don't forget, everyone, to keep an eye on Thirsty Fox. It's an amazing brand, thirstyfox.com. If you can't experience it in person yet, you can always fly to India, and take all kinds of risks to drink it because it will probably be worth it. But you can also wait for expansion, or most easily just follow them on Instagram. So thank you again for listening. And I want to end by saying, we bring you great quality content. If you're enjoying the content, like it, follow it, share it. That keeps us on our toes and knows we're doing better. The Firebelly Social Show is brought to you by Firebelly, where we make brands more likable and profitable through social media marketing. We've helped big clients and small clients, companies you might know like Netflix, Qdoba, Fiji Water, transform their social media strategies. If you want to establish your brand, get ROI, let's talk, firebellymarketing.com. Until then, I'll be thinking about you guys. I'll be thinking about cool content. Thank you, Sid, and we shall see you on the flip side.
Thanks for listening to the Firebelly Social Show. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.